The first time I felt like I no longer existed in my son's life, it didn't happen in a loud or obvious way. There was no argument, no harsh words, no breaking point I could look back on and say, that's when everything ended. It was much quieter than that. Almost invisible. Like something slowly fading until one day, you realize it's gone. At first, I didn't even understand what I was feeling. It was just a strange emptiness, like something was missing, but I couldn't name it. Ion used to call me every day. Even if it was just for a few minutes, even if he was busy, he would check in. Mom, did you eat? Mom, take your medicine. Mom, I'll come visit this weekend. Those small things, they meant everything. Then those calls started to change. Daily turned into every few days. Then once a week. Then sometimes nothing at all. Whenever I called him, he sounded distracted. Not rude, not cold, just distant. Like his mind was somewhere else entirely. Mom, I'm in a meeting. Mom, I'll call you later. Mom, things are a bit hectic these days. Later never came. Hectic never ended. And slowly, I stopped asking questions. Because somewhere deep down, I was afraid of the answers. After his marriage, I had expected changes. Of course I had. Every mother does. A new person comes into your son's life, and naturally, things shift. I had prepared myself for that. I had even welcomed it. When Ion brought Sarah home for the first time, I made sure she felt comfortable. I treated her like my own daughter. I gave her space, respected her choices, and never interfered in their decisions. I thought that's what a good mother-in-law does. I thought love, when given freely, always comes back. But I was wrong. The first thing that truly unsettled me was something small. So small that anyone else would have ignored it. But to me, it felt like a crack forming in something I had always believed was unbreakable. I was scrolling through social media one evening, looking at Ion's profile. He had posted new pictures, him and Sarah, smiling, traveling, enjoying life. I felt happy seeing him like that. Truly, I did. But then I noticed something strange. The old pictures were gone. All of them. The ones where we stood together. The ones from his childhood birthdays, his graduation day, the simple moments we had captured over the years. Even the photo he once said was his favorite, the one where I was laughing and he had his arm around me, it had disappeared. I refreshed the page. Nothing. I checked again later. Still nothing. A strange feeling settled in my chest. I told myself maybe he archived them. Maybe he was reorganizing his profile. Maybe I was overthinking. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. It wasn't just about photos. It felt like I was being erased. I didn't ask him about it. I didn't want to hear something that would hurt more than my imagination already was. So I stayed quiet. Days passed, and that quietness became my habit. But silence has a way of growing heavier over time. One evening, I finally called him again. The phone rang longer than usual. For a moment, I thought he wouldn't pick up. But then he did. Hello. His voice felt unfamiliar. Not completely, but enough to make my heart ache. Ion Beta, how are you? I'm fine, Mom. Just busy. That word again. Busy. It had become the answer to everything. I was just thinking about you, I said softly. It's been a while. Yeah, things have been a bit hectic. I hesitated, then gathered the courage to say what had been on my mind for days. Can I come visit this weekend? There was a pause. A long one. Not the kind where someone is thinking, but the kind where someone is trying to find a polite way to say no. I'll check and let you know, he said finally. Check. That word echoed in my mind long after the call ended. Check with whom? With Sarah? The thought made something inside me tighten, but I pushed it away. I didn't want to think like that. I didn't want to believe that I needed someone else's permission to see my own son. He didn't call back. Saturday came. Sunday passed. No message. No call. At first, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he got busy. Maybe he assumed I wouldn't come without confirmation. But the truth was becoming harder to ignore. I wasn't a priority anymore. Still, something inside me refused to accept it completely. So I decided to go anyway. I woke up early that morning and prepared everything like I used to. I bought his favorite sweets. I even wore the shawl he once said made me look elegant. It sounds foolish now, but at the time, it felt important. As if looking presentable would somehow make me more welcome. The journey felt longer than usual. Every passing minute filled me with a strange mix of hope and fear. I kept imagining how it would go. Maybe he would smile when he saw me. Maybe he would say, "Mom, you should have told me, I would have come to pick you." Maybe everything would feel normal again. But deep down, there was another voice. A quieter one. What if it doesn't? When I reached his house, I stood outside the gate for a few seconds, trying to steady myself. The house looked different. Not in a big way, but enough for me to notice. The plants I had once helped choose were gone. The curtains had changed. Even the nameplate felt unfamiliar. Ion and Sarah. That was all it said. I stared at it longer than I should have. I told myself it didn't matter. But it did. I rang the bell. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Sarah stood there. Her expression didn't change when she saw me. "Oh," she said. "You're here." Not Amy. Not even a smile. Just those two words. "Yes," I replied, forcing a gentle tone. I was nearby, so I thought I'd visit. It was a lie. I had come only for them. She didn't move immediately. For a brief moment, she just looked at me, as if deciding something. Then she turned her head slightly and called out, "Ion, your mother is here." Your mother. The words felt heavier than they should have. Ion appeared a few seconds later. When he saw me, his reaction wasn't what I had imagined during the entire journey. There was no warmth. No happiness. Just discomfort. "Mom, you should have told us before coming." I held out the box of sweets. "I did call." He glanced at it, then looked away. "Come in," he said after a moment. I stepped inside slowly. The house felt unfamiliar in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't just the furniture or the decorations. It was the feeling, the atmosphere, the sense that I didn't belong there anymore. I sat down carefully, my hands clasped together. Sarah went into the kitchen without saying anything. Ion remained standing. "How are you?" he asked. "I'm fine," I replied. "I just wanted to see you. You could have called." I did. Silence. It stretched longer than it should have. I took a deep breath. "Ion, did I do something wrong?" He frowned slightly. "No. Why would you think that?" "Because you don't call anymore. You don't visit. It feels like you're avoiding me." "I'm not avoiding you," he said quickly. "I'm just busy." That word again. Busy. It felt hollow now. Sarah returned with tea and placed it in front of me without meeting my eyes. "Thank you," I said softly. She nodded, but didn't sit down. Instead, she stood beside Ion, her presence quiet but firm. Like a wall. "I miss you," I said, looking at him. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt. But it disappeared just as quickly. "I've just been caught up with work and things at home," he replied. Things at home. As if I was no longer part of what he called home. "I won't stay long," I said. "That's fine," Sarah replied immediately. The words hit harder than I expected. I finished my tea in silence. When I stood up to leave, neither of them stopped me. At the door, I turned back one last time. "Ion, can I come again sometime?" He hesitated. That hesitation said everything. "Just call before coming," he said. I nodded. "I will." But as I walked away, I realized something that made every step feel heavier. I wasn't part of his life anymore. I was someone who needed permission to enter it. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at my phone. No messages. No calls. Just silence. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. At first, I kept trying. Then slowly, I stopped. Not because I didn't care, but because caring alone wasn't enough anymore. And somewhere along the way, without any explanation, without any closure, I had been erased. Years have a strange way of passing when you are no longer part of someone's life. They don't feel full. They don't feel meaningful. They just pass. Quietly. Slowly. Like a clock ticking in an empty room. At first, I used to count the days. I would look at my phone every morning, hoping to see his name on the screen. A missed call. A message. Anything. But nothing ever came. And as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, I stopped counting. Because counting only made the silence louder. The house I lived in became too big for me. Every corner held a memory. Every object reminded me of a life that no longer existed. His old room remained untouched for a long time. I couldn't bring myself to change anything. His books, his clothes, even the small things he had left behind, they stayed exactly where they were, as if he might come back one day and need them. But he never did. Eventually, I closed that room. Not because I wanted to forget, but because remembering had become too painful. Life became routine. I woke up early, made tea, sat by the window, and watched the world move on without me. People came and went. Neighbors changed. Children grew up. Time didn't stop for anyone. Except it felt like it had stopped for me. Sometimes I would pick up my phone and scroll through old messages. Conversations that once felt ordinary now felt like treasures. His "Good morning, Mom." His "I'll be late today." His "Don't worry, I'm fine." I read them over and over again, as if they could somehow bring him back. But words don't have that power. Not when they belong to the past. I don't know exactly when I stopped hoping. It didn't happen all at once. It was gradual. Quiet. Like everything else. One day, I realized I hadn't checked my phone in hours. And it didn't bother me. That was the moment I understood something had changed inside me. Hope had faded. Not completely, but enough. I started living differently after that. Not happily, not fully, but differently. I learned to exist without expecting anything. Without waiting. Without wondering. It was easier that way. Or at least, it hurt less. Years passed. I stopped keeping track of how many. My hair turned gray. My hands grew weaker. My reflection in the mirror slowly became someone I barely recognized. But none of that bothered me as much as the emptiness I carried inside. Because no matter how much time passed, one thing never changed. He never came back. And then, one afternoon, everything shifted. It was an ordinary day. I had gone to the market to buy groceries. The weather was warm, the streets were crowded, and life moved around me in its usual rhythm. I walked slowly, carefully, my steps measured, my mind quiet. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular. Until I saw it. At first, I didn't even realize what I was looking at. A magazine stand. Bright covers. Bold headlines. Faces of people I didn't know. And then, my name. I froze. For a moment, I thought I was imagining things. My eyes moved closer to the cover, my heart suddenly beating faster than it had in years. There it was. Clear. Unmistakable. My name. Printed in large, bold letters. I reached out with trembling hands and picked up the magazine. My fingers felt cold, even though the air was warm. It didn't make sense. Why would my name be there? I wasn't someone important. I hadn't done anything remarkable. I had spent the last few years living quietly, almost invisibly. So how? I looked closer. Below my name was a headline. A sentence that made my breath catch in my throat. It said something about a lost mother. About a woman who had disappeared from her son's life. About a story that had remained untold for years. My heart started pounding. This wasn't a coincidence. This was about me. I quickly flipped the pages, my hands shaking as I searched for the article. When I found it, I felt something inside me shift, something I couldn't quite explain. There was a photo. An old one. Of me. I stared at it, unable to move. It had been taken years ago. I looked younger, happier. There was a softness in my eyes that I didn't recognize anymore. But it was me. There was no doubt about it. My chest tightened as I began to read. Every word felt unreal. It spoke about a mother who had been cut off from her son's life without explanation. It mentioned years of silence. It described the emotional distance, the unanswered questions, the quiet suffering. It felt like someone had taken my life and turned it into a story. But there was something else. Something that made my hands tremble even more. It mentioned my son. Not by name at first. But later, clearly. Ion. My breath stopped. How did they know? Who wrote this? And why now? My mind raced with questions, each one louder than the last. I looked around, suddenly feeling exposed, as if everyone could see what I was holding. As if everyone knew my story. I quickly paid for the magazine and walked home, my heart still pounding. The entire way back, one thought kept repeating in my mind. Who did this? When I reached home, I sat down immediately and started reading again. This time more carefully. More slowly. Every line felt personal. Too personal. Details that no outsider should know. Moments that had never been shared. Feelings that I had never spoken out loud. It was as if someone had been watching my life from the inside. And then I reached the end. There was no author name. Just one line. If you are reading this, it's time to come back. I stared at those words for a long time. Come back? Come back where? To whom? My hands felt cold again. Because suddenly, after years of silence, something had found me. And I didn't know if it was meant to heal. Or to hurt me all over again. That night, I couldn't sleep. The magazine lay beside me, open to the same page. I read it again and again, searching for answers that weren't there. Who knew my story? Who would write something like this? And most importantly, why now? After all these years, why now? The silence that had once surrounded me so completely was no longer quiet. It was shifting, breaking, changing into something unfamiliar. And for the first time in years, I felt something I thought I had lost forever. Not hope. Not yet. But something close to it. And at the same time, a deep, unsettling fear. Because whatever this was, it had just begun. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, the same words echoed in my mind. If you are reading this, it's time to come back. Come back. The sentence felt simple, but it carried a weight I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just a suggestion. It felt like a call. Like someone was reaching into the silence I had been living in for years and pulling me out of it. But who? I turned on the lamp and picked up the magazine again. My fingers traced the edges of the page, as if touching it would somehow reveal the truth hidden inside. I read the article again. And again. Each time, something new stood out. A detail I hadn't noticed before. A line that felt too specific. Too personal. It wasn't written like a news report. It was written like someone who knew me. Someone who had seen everything. The way it described my loneliness, it wasn't exaggerated. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Real. Honest in a way that only someone close could understand. My heart began to beat faster. There were only a few people who knew my life that closely. And one of them was Ion. The thought came suddenly. Sharp. Uncomfortable. Could it be him? No. I shook my head immediately. If he cared enough to write something like this, why hadn't he called? Why hadn't he come back? Why would he stay silent for years and then suddenly reach out like this? It didn't make sense. But then again, none of this made sense. I looked at the last line again. If you are reading this, it's time to come back. Come back where? The question circled in my mind over and over until it started to feel like a whisper I couldn't escape. The next morning, I woke up feeling different. Not lighter. Not happier. But aware. As if something had shifted inside me. For the first time in years, I didn't follow my usual routine immediately. I didn't sit quietly by the window. I didn't let the day pass without purpose. Instead, I picked up the magazine again. There had to be something I missed. Something small. Something hidden. And then I saw it. At the very bottom of the page, beneath the article, there was a tiny line of text I hadn't noticed before. An address. My breath caught. It was written so faintly that it almost blended into the page, as if it wasn't meant to be seen easily. I leaned closer, my heart starting to race again. It was a location. Across the city. I stared at it for a long time. Was this what the message meant? Was this where I was supposed to go? A part of me wanted to ignore it. To close the magazine and go back to the quiet life I had built for myself. A life without expectations. Without surprises. Without pain. But another part of me, a stronger part, wouldn't let me. Because after years of silence, something had finally reached out to me. And I couldn't pretend it didn't matter. I spent hours thinking about it. Walking around the house. Sitting down. Standing up again. My mind moved in circles, unable to settle. What if it was a mistake? What if it was something dangerous? What if it was just a coincidence? But deep down, I knew it wasn't. This was meant for me. And if I didn't go, I would spend the rest of my life wondering what I had missed. That thought alone was enough to push me forward. By afternoon, I had made my decision. I was going. The journey felt different this time. Not like the last time I had gone to Ion's house, filled with hope and fear. This time, it was something else. Uncertainty. Every step felt like I was moving closer to something unknown. Something that could either give me answers or break me all over again. The address led me to a part of the city I wasn't familiar with. The streets were quieter, less crowded, more distant from the life I knew. I checked the address again and again, making sure I hadn't made a mistake. But it was correct. Finally, I reached the place. And when I saw it, I froze. It wasn't a house. It wasn't an office. It was a small building with a simple sign outside. A community center. I stood there, staring at it, trying to understand what this meant. Why would my story lead me here? What was I supposed to find inside? For a moment, I hesitated. My hand hovered near the door, my heart beating faster with every second. I could still turn back. I could walk away and forget all of this. But I didn't. I pushed the door open. The inside was quiet, warm. Soft voices echoed faintly in the background. A few people sat in different corners, talking, reading, or simply sitting in silence. No one seemed to notice me at first. I stepped inside slowly, unsure of where to go. And then, I saw him. My breath stopped. Ion. He was standing near the far end of the room, talking to someone. His back was turned to me, but I would recognize him anywhere. Years had passed. He looked older, more tired. But it was him. There was no doubt. My hands started to tremble. For a moment, I couldn't move. All the emotions I had buried for years rushed back at once. Pain, anger, love, confusion, everything. He turned slightly. And then he saw me. Time seemed to stop. His expression changed instantly. Shock, disbelief, and then something deeper. Something I hadn't seen in years. Emotion. "Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't realize I was crying until I felt the tears on my face. I couldn't even finish the sentence. There were too many questions. Too many feelings. He took a step forward. Then another. As if he wasn't sure if I was real. "What are you doing here?" he asked. The question hit me in a way I didn't expect. "What am I doing here?" I repeated softly. "I should be asking you that." He looked confused. I don't understand." I pulled the magazine out of my bag and held it up. "This," I said. "This brought me here." He stared at it. Then back at me. "I didn't write that," he said. The words landed heavily between us. "You didn't?" I asked, my voice shaking. He shook his head slowly. "No." Silence. The ground beneath me felt unsteady. If he didn't write it, then who did? Before I could ask anything else, a voice interrupted us. "I was wondering when you would come." We both turned at the same time. An older man stood a few steps away, watching us calmly. There was something in his expression. Something knowing. Something intentional. My heart started pounding again. "You're the one who wrote it," I said, my voice barely steady. He smiled slightly. "Yes." Ion looked at him, confused. "What is she talking about?" The man stepped closer. "I think it's time you both heard the truth." The air in the room changed. Heavy. Tense. Like something important was about to unfold. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Because whatever he was about to say, I knew it would change everything. And for the first time in years, I realized that the story I thought had ended long ago was only just beginning. The moment he said those words, the air around us felt heavier than before. "I think it's time you both heard the truth." Truth. It was a simple word, but it carried years of silence inside it. Years of unanswered questions. Years of pain that had never been explained. I looked at Ion. He looked just as confused as I felt. "Who are you?" he asked the man, his voice firm but uneasy. The man didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured toward a small seating area nearby. "Sit," he said calmly. "Both of you. This isn't something you should hear standing." Something about his tone made it impossible to refuse. Reluctantly, we both sat down. Not next to each other, but close enough to feel the distance between us. A distance that had lasted years. The man took a seat across from us. His expression was steady, almost gentle, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that made my heart race. "My name is Kareem," he began. "And before you ask, no, I'm not a stranger to either of you." Ayan frowned. "I've never seen you before." Kareem gave a faint smile. "That's because you were never meant to." A chill ran down my spine. "What does that mean?" I asked quietly. He looked at me first, then at Ayan. And then he spoke. "Years ago, when your father passed away," he said, looking at Ayan, "things didn't just change emotionally. There were complications. Financial ones. Legal ones. Things you were too young to understand." Ayan's expression hardened slightly. "What does that have to do with this?" "Everything," Kareem replied. I felt my hands tighten in my lap. Because I remembered those days. The struggle. The uncertainty. But I had always believed I had handled everything alone. "I was your father's friend," Kareem continued. "And after he passed, I was asked to keep an eye on things. Quietly. Without interfering unless necessary." I stared at him. "I don't remember you," I said. "You weren't supposed to," he replied gently. "Your husband didn't want you to worry. He trusted that you were strong enough to raise Ayan on your own. But he also knew that life can be unpredictable." Ayan leaned forward slightly. "So you've been watching us all this time?" "Not watching," Kareem corrected. "Protecting. From a distance." A silence fell between us. I didn't know how to feel. Grateful? Uncomfortable? Confused? "Why are you telling us this now?" I asked. Kareem exhaled slowly. "Because something happened a few years ago," he said. "Something that changed everything." My heart skipped a beat. I glanced at Ayan. He looked tense. "What happened?" he asked. Kareem's gaze shifted toward him. "You made a decision," he said quietly. Ayan frowned. "What decision?" Kareem held his gaze. "You chose to walk away from your mother." The words hit like a sudden storm. Ayan's expression changed instantly. "That's not," he started, but stopped himself. "It's not what?" Kareem asked calmly. Ayan looked frustrated now. "You don't know anything about what happened between us." "I know more than you think," Kareem replied. The tension in the room grew thicker. I felt my chest tighten as I looked at Ayan. "This is your chance," Kareem said softly. "Tell her." Ayan looked at me. For a moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Hesitation. Guilt. Fear. But also resistance. "There's nothing to tell," he said finally. "Things just changed." "Things don't just change," Kareem said firmly. "People make choices." Ayan stood up suddenly, running a hand through his hair. "I don't understand why this is happening," he said. "Why are you bringing all this up now? What do you want?" Kareem didn't raise his voice. "I want the truth to come out," he said. "Because both of you have been living with half of it." My heart started pounding again. "Half of it? What does that mean?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Kareem looked at me. "There were things you never knew," he said. Then he turned to Ayan. "And there were things you were made to believe." Ayan froze. "What are you talking about?" he asked slowly. Kareem didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. A folded envelope. My breath caught as he held it out. "This," he said, "is where everything began to fall apart." Ayan stared at it. "What is it?" "A letter," Kareem replied. "From who?" I asked. Kareem's eyes met mine. "From you." The world around me seemed to stop. "From me?" I whispered. He nodded. "Yes." I shook my head immediately. "I never wrote any letter." Kareem's expression didn't change. "I know," he said. The confusion in the room became unbearable. "Then what is this?" Ayan demanded. Kareem handed him the envelope. "Open it." Ayan hesitated for a second, then took it. His hands were steady at first. But as he unfolded the paper inside, that changed. I watched his face carefully. Every small reaction. Every shift in expression. Confusion. Then shock. Then something deeper. Something painful. "What is it?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. His eyes moved quickly across the page. And then he stopped. Completely still. "Ayan," I said softly. He looked up at me. And for the first time in years, I saw tears in his eyes. "This is your handwriting," he said. My heart dropped. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." He held the letter out toward me. My hands trembled as I took it. The moment I saw it, I felt the ground disappear beneath me. It did look like my handwriting. Every curve, every line, every detail. It looked exactly like something I would write. But the words were not mine. My eyes scanned the page, my breath becoming uneven. It was a letter, addressed to Ion. But it didn't sound like a mother. It sounded cold, distant, almost cruel. It spoke about letting go, about moving on, about not needing each other anymore. And at the bottom, my name, signed, as if I had written it. "I never wrote this," I said, my voice breaking. "I swear to you, Ion, I never wrote this." He stared at me, torn between what he was seeing and what he was hearing. "I got this letter years ago," he said quietly, "right after my marriage." My chest tightened. "And you believed it?" I asked, tears forming in my eyes. "What was I supposed to think?" he replied, his voice shaking now. "It was in your handwriting. It had your name. It said you didn't want to be part of my life anymore." I felt something inside me shatter. "All those years," I whispered. "You thought I left you?" Ion didn't respond, because the answer was already clear. "Yes," Kareem said quietly. That's exactly what he believed. The silence that followed was unbearable. Years of pain. Years of misunderstanding. All because of a lie. "Who did this?" Ion asked, his voice filled with anger now. Kareem exhaled slowly. "That," he said, "is the truth you're not ready for." My heart started pounding again. Because something told me the worst was yet to come. And whatever had separated us all those years was never just distance. It was something much deeper. Something deliberate. And now, it was finally coming to light. The silence after Kareem's words felt heavier than anything we had experienced so far. "That is the truth you're not ready for." Those words didn't just hang in the air, they settled inside my chest like something sharp and cold. For years, I had believed my son had chosen to leave me. And for years, he had believed I had abandoned him. All because of one letter. One lie. Ion was still holding the paper, his hands trembling slightly now, not with confusion, but with anger. "Who did this?" he asked again, his voice no longer uncertain, but firm. "Who would do something like this?" Kareem didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at both of us carefully, as if measuring whether we were ready for what was coming next. "Before I tell you," he said slowly, "you need to understand something. This wasn't just about separating you two. This was planned. Carefully." A chill ran through my body. Planned? My mind immediately went to one place. One person. But I pushed the thought away. "No," I whispered under my breath. Ion noticed. "What?" he asked. "What is it?" I shook my head quickly. "Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Because deep down, a name had already formed in my mind. And I was afraid to say it out loud." Kareem leaned back slightly, his expression growing more serious. "The letter didn't just appear," he continued. "It was delivered. Through someone who had access to both of you. Someone who could make it believable." Ion's jaw tightened. "Just tell us," he said. "Enough with the hints." Kareem's eyes shifted toward him. "Your wife," he said quietly. The world went silent. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. "What?" Ion's voice cracked slightly. "That's not possible." But I couldn't speak at all. Because the name that I had been too afraid to say had just been spoken. "Sarah." "No," Ion said again, shaking his head. "No, that doesn't make any sense." Kareem didn't react to his denial. "She found out about certain financial matters tied to your father's assets," he said calmly. "Things that would eventually involve both of you. But there was a condition attached, something your father had arranged." My heart started racing again. "What condition?" I asked. Kareem looked at me. "That the final authority would remain with you," he said. I froze. "With me?" "Yes," he nodded. "Your husband trusted you. He wanted to make sure everything stayed secure. But that also meant no major decision could be made without your involvement." Ion's face changed. Understanding began to replace confusion. "You're saying," he started slowly, She needed me to be away from Mom? Kareem didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The answer was already there. No, Ion stepped back slightly, running his hands through his hair. No, she wouldn't. She couldn't. But his voice lacked certainty now. Because deep down, he knew. I felt my legs weaken slightly as I sat there, trying to process everything. All those years. All that distance. All that pain. And the reason behind it was manipulation. She made sure the letter reached you, Kareem continued. And she made sure you never questioned it. Small comments. Subtle actions. Enough to reinforce what you believed. Ion's breathing became uneven. She used me, he whispered. Yes, Kareem said quietly. And she used your silence to isolate her. He looked at me when he said that. And suddenly, everything made sense. The coldness. The distance. The way Sarah had looked at me that day. The way she had said, "That's fine," when I said I wouldn't stay long. It wasn't just indifference. It was intention. Tears started to fall from my eyes again, but this time they felt different. Not just pain, but something else. Release. Ion, I said softly. He looked at me, and the moment our eyes met, something broke between us. Not distance. Not silence. But the wall that had stood between us for years. I thought you left me, he said, his voice shaking. I thought you didn't want me anymore. I never left, I whispered. I waited for you every single day. His eyes filled with tears. I should have come back, he said. I should have asked you. I should have. No, I shook my head, standing up slowly. You believed what you saw. Anyone would have. But I should have known you, he said, his voice breaking. I should have trusted you. I stepped closer. For a moment, we both hesitated. Years of distance don't disappear instantly. But then, he took a step forward. And so did I. And suddenly, we were no longer standing apart. He wrapped his arms around me, holding me tightly, as if trying to make up for all the years we had lost. And I held him back just as tightly. Because no matter how much time had passed, he was still my son. And I was still his mother. We both broke down in that moment. Not quietly, not controlled, but fully. All the pain, all the silence, all the unanswered questions, it all came out at once. And for the first time in years, we weren't alone in it. After a long time, we slowly pulled away. But something had changed. The distance was gone. Not completely healed, but broken. What happens now? Ion asked, his voice calmer but still heavy. Kareem stood up. That depends on you, he said. The truth is out now. What you do with it is your choice. Ion nodded slowly. Then he looked at me. I'm coming with you, he said. The words were simple, but they carried everything I had waited years to hear. I smiled through my tears. Okay, I said softly. We walked out of that place together. Not as strangers. Not as people separated by silence. But as a mother and son, finding their way back. The journey home felt different this time. Not heavy. Not uncertain. But quiet in a peaceful way. Like something that had been broken was finally beginning to heal. When we reached my house, Ion stopped at the door. This is where you've been all these years, he said quietly. Yes, I replied. He looked around, taking in every detail. And I could see it in his eyes. The realization of everything he had missed. I'm sorry, he said again. I placed my hand on his. Come inside, I said gently. We have time now. And for the first time in years, we truly did. That night, we sat together for hours. Talking. Remembering. Filling the silence that had once separated us. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. And sometimes, that's enough. As for Sarah, that chapter wasn't ours to carry anymore. Some truths don't need revenge. They just need to be seen. And once they are, they lose their power. Days turned into something new after that. Not the past. But not the same empty present either. Something in between. Something hopeful. And one morning, as I sat by the window with a cup of tea, I noticed something I hadn't seen in a long time. My phone lit up. A message. From Ion. Good morning, Mom. Did you eat? I smiled. Not because it was something new, but because it was something we had found again. And this time, it wasn't going to be taken away. Because some bonds, no matter how broken they seem, are never truly lost. They just wait for the truth to bring them back.